The ABSA Off-Road Championship is a jewel in the South African motorsport crown. Catering for production cars and special vehicles, the championship is made up of 8 rounds run in 5 South African provinces and an event in neighboring Botswana. In this program, we take a look at the action and drama that unfolded through the year in the ABSA Off-Road Championship.
The opening round of the ABSA Off-Road Championship was based in Darling, one of South Africa's best-known hamlets and home to painters, poets and Evita Besaidnout. The Adenko 400 brought with it new faces and new machinery, but the front of the production car field had a very familiar look about it. The Donaldson Nissan Navara crews of reigning drivers champion Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford and Hannes Grobler and co-drivers champion Jean Moore were again at the front of the pack, with a Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Japie Badenhorst in hot pursuit.
Among the special vehicles, reigning champions Kali Sulwald and Son Quinton were quick out of the starting blocks in the Sulwald Racing Bat. Atlas Copco pair Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia gave their supporters an early boost, with Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman giving the Motorite Revo 1 4x4 its maiden run. Also in the mix were former champion Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, along with Regent Racing pair Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, and the tyre rack Jimco of Naeem Musaji and Mohammed Mulston.
On the final loop, the Donaldson Nissan of Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford took control of proceedings, with veteran former SA champion Hannes Grobler into his 33rd year as a Nissan Motorsport driver, and Jean Moore, his co-driver, in a solid second place. A strong showing saw Chris Visser and Japie Badenhorst up into third place in a Toyota Hilux, minus its RFS team livery. A puncture late in the race dropped Ivan Tollefson and Quinn Evans down to 4th in a third Donaldson Nissan Navara, with the pair under some late pressure from the factory Castrol Toyota Hilux of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton.
It was first time out of a production car for Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara, with Christian Deploy and Henk Janssen van Vieren also making their debut in the Premier SP class. Final results saw Vos Pitchford win ahead of Grobler Moore, with Visser Badenhorst also on the podium. The top 5 were completed by Tollefson Evans and the Taylor Houghton Castrol Toyota Hilux, with a good result for Hein Lateghan making his off-road debut, and Chris Birkin in another factory Toyota Hilux.
The Class D honours went to father and son combination of Cliff and Louis Weichelt in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux D4D. They led home Gebert van Breda and Johan de Tooy in the Northam Toyota Hilux.
There was early success in Class E for 4x4 Megaworld pair Dion Venter and Ian Palmer in a Toyota Hilux. Venter and Palmer were made to work by Free Staters Louw de Bruin and Rian Greling in the Rurikon Ford Ranger, who were happy with second in their production car debut. The final podium placing went to reigning champion Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
And when the dust had finally settled, it was a dream start for the year for Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford.
It was also a dream start for Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman in the new Motorite Revo 1 4x4. The former champions gave the Motorite car a win on debut, with Naeem Musaji and Mohammed Mulston picking up their best ever finish in the tyre rack Jimco. Third went to the ever dependable Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat. Rounding out the top 5 were Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Bat, and the similar car of Gary Gillingham and Dani Stassen in Atlas Copco colours.
On a glorious Cape summer day, brothers Johan and Etienne Besaidnout made use of local knowledge to get their season off to a flyer with a win in Class P in the Adenko Bat.
The Adenko Cup overflowed when Bez Besaidnout and son Dion won Class B in another Adenko Bat. The pair led home the Century Racing Bat of Simon Beckett and Steve Harris, with the local crew Derek DeToy and Ian Pinar third in the Orange Tree Bat, ahead of debutants Keith and Andrew Makanete in the Zarko Light.
More champagne, and it was Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman who celebrated a win first time out in the Motorite Revo 1 4x4.
One of the world's premier surfing venues played host to round 2 of the ABSA series. In Jeffreys Bay, surfing gave way to horsepower at the Eastern Cape 400. There were first appearances for a new turbo diesel factory Ford Ranger and the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. But it was again Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford who set the early pace among the production cars.
There were the makings of a good special vehicle scrap between the Century Racing CR2 of Mark Corbett, Rudy Balzar, and the Motorite Revo 1 4x4 of Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman. Both cars were running to a 4x4 specification, with the Motorite car winning the Adenko 400 on debut. With Foss and Pitchford temporarily sidelined with a broken brake pipe, the production car running was taken up by Hichu and Jaap de Bruin in the Micron XL Toyota Hilux, and Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. Also in the picture were Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, with Cully and Quinton Silwald's bat being chased by the RFS Toyota of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst.
Will Battershill and Reg Sutton were having a good run in a privately entered bat, and behind them Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen were having an encouraging first outing in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, built by Kenny Veringa and his team. The SP class entry was being chased by Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Porter, with Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, fourth on this year's Dakar Rally, putting together another solid performance in the Donaldson Nissan Navara.
Locals were enjoying good weather and good racing, with close battles spread over the route, with KZN pair Don Thompson and Don Blakey muscling their way past Johan Telford and Jaco Swart. The husband and wife team of George and Sharon Barkhuizen were also going along steadily in the new AIM Toyota Hilux, with the Bloemfontein pair chased by Pretoria-based Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
A remarkable recovery and problems for other fancied runners saw Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford fight back to score win number 2. There was a good start to Thomas Rundle's Ford career as he and Stavros Giannakos took second in a petrol model Ford Ranger. Another steady performance put Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans on the podium, while Foss and Pitchford took an early grip on the production car championship. Tollefson, Evans and Visser Badenhorst kept up their title challenges with encouraging results for Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin and the Barkhuizens. At the other end of the scale, there were disappointing retirements for Hannes Grobler and Jean Moore, Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton, and Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald.
There was another Class D win for Cliff and Louis Weichelt ahead of Devot van Breda and Johan de Tooy, who ran into a problem or two themselves. Third were Heini Strumpfer and Hendrik van der Linde in the Micron XL Toyota Hilux.
The 4x4 Megaworld Toyota pair of Dion Fenter and Ian Palmer had a little trouble getting past the Ruacon Ford Ranger of Louw de Bruin and Rian Greyling, who were among the retirements. Victory saw Fenter Palmer take a grip on the Class E Championship, and coming in behind them were Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus, and the Ford crew of Bapi Rapalooza and Kulele Vakalisa.
After a spirited fight back, it was 2 out of 2 for the Donaldson Nissan squad and Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford.
On the special vehicle front, 2 wins in 2 starts gave Hutchinson and Bergman a full house of points. Second for Variawa, Rousseau opened their account, while third place for Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, fourth for Nick and Ryan Harper, and seventh for Musaji and Mulston left the 3 crews locked on 25 points each.
The 2 Silvot racing entries in the hands of Herman and Vichard Silvot and champions Cully and Quinton also scored their first points, with the 2 cars coming in ahead of Naheem Musaji and Mohammed Molson.
Former Class B champions Jan and Hendrik Kraai won Class P in the Keymax bat to score their first points of the year. Third place behind the KEC bat of impressive rookies Johan van Staden and James Rousseau was enough for Johan and Etienne Besaidenout to stay at the top of the championship table. Another set of brothers in David and Gary White in the Ruacon bat also scored their first points of the season, along with former champions Richard Schilling and Chris Davies in the ACECO.
Two wins in 2 races in a new car was a feather in the cap of the Motorite team.
There can be no success in any sport these days without a professional approach. Regent Racing has entries in the production car and special vehicle categories in the APSA Off-Road Series. Team manager Sharon Marsh plays a vital behind-the-scenes role where she has to display organizational as well as public relations skills in a hugely expensive sport.
It is. If I had to show you our balance sheet, I think anyone would be horrified. You know, it depends which level you go at. Our cars are in excess of 1.3 million rand upwards, so that's cost an incredible amount just to run a workshop alone. And then we have caravans, the rig alone, to be able to bring the vehicles here. Imperial Group help us a lot with that. They sponsor the rig for us, and they give us a driver as well, because there's also support crew that is critical. You know, we go out on routes, we check times, we phone to the drivers when they want to know, do they push it, don't they push it? So it's all of those logistics as well that we've got to know at any point in time. We are there in the championship points, and our pits, we want to make sure it's as professional as possible, that our guys are well nourished. We do a lot around fit products in terms of dehydration and making sure that they've got the right type of food, the right type of supplements as well. So that comes into account as well. And then the logistics are, we put on a big road show. So we want to make sure that our sponsors can come and join us on the events. At Sun City alone, we had 36 rooms, to give you an idea. So we built good relationships with people. And so the road show is about family sponsorship. We bring business people on. So there's a lot of logistics. We always make sure we got food, running water, kettles, mobile toilets, so that it's comfortable. Because we want people to come in families, and if it's not comfortable, then the wives aren't going to enjoy it. And so everyone enjoys their day and has a great time.
So if you were perhaps thinking of jumping into your beat-up old bucky and heading for the bush to blow the opposition to the weeds, those home truths from Sharon Marsh just put you straight on a few pointers.
The wild dog, an awkward, smelly canine. Limited to just one terrain, it has very narrow horizons. Unlike the versatile Fortuner, which can go anywhere on a whim. Sus, they really should remain lesser spotted.
Oh, close it, close it, close it. Yeah, walk away. Thought so.
The boxer, with his well-trained man, settles down for the night.
To walk the final steps,
69 years old, their last effort is done.
you must first take the next one.
That's it now.
The 2010 FA Cup. Take the next step. World football lives on Africa's leading football channel, SuperSport, powered by Tana Insurance.
With an epic victory against their arch-rivals Argentina, Brazil earned themselves a coveted place in the final 32 and a shot at an incredible 6th title. Who will join them at the FIFA 2010 World Cup South Africa? World football lives on SuperSport.
I'm striking out in a different direction. I've seen the future, and this is the way. Bending the rules, it's all in my palm. Because I need a lady like you on my arm.
Technology is ever evolving in motorsport, and Ford this year became the first South African manufacturer to go the diesel route in the APSA Championship.
It's been exciting. You know, it's been difficult. I make no bones about it. It's been a very steep learning curve, but we've learned a lot. And when I look back and I reflect on it, it's actually been quite exciting. We've learned so much. And it's always great and love to learn all the time, and to make steps and go forward is exciting and nice. So although it's been daunting, it's been exciting, and we've come a hell of a long way. So.
And the prospects for next year must be very exciting.
I think that's the most exciting. I'd almost say I'd like to skip this race and start stripping the cars so that we can get ready for next year, because we've got some big developments which we want to do during off-season, complete rebuilds of the cars. We're still staying with the same concept and everything, but we've got a lot of upgrades, things that we've learned through the year and just haven't had enough time to do and to implement. We'll now have a 5-month layoff and plenty of time to do what we want to do, to get our temperatures down, to get our weight distribution down, to do all sorts of things like that. So we're very excited about next year, and actually I can't wait for this race to finish so we can get cracking.
Round 3 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship is traditionally based in the sugarcane farming area of Eston, with race headquarters in the Eston Farmers Club. The Nissan Sugarbelt 400 is also one of the toughest events of the year, but provided for a change with Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton setting the pace in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. The Century Racing entries of Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar and Colin Matthews with Alan Smith led the way in the special vehicle category, with the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4 of Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman doing the chasing.
The Donaldson Nissan Charge was led by Hannes Grobler and Joan Moore, with the RFS Toyota crew of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst again going along steadily.
There were high hopes for local hero Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the diesel Ford Ranger TDCi, and Ivan Tollefson and Quinn Evans were looking strong too. A disastrous Friday prologue saw championship leaders Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford start 55th on the road, and among the special vehicles, Herman and Wichard Silvalt were soon into their stride. Matters were to go from bad to worse for Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, with Nick and Ryan Harper as steady as ever in the Atlas Copco Bat, while George and Sharon Barkhuizen made an encouraging start in the AIM Toyota Hilux.
Off-road racing sometimes turns into a contact sport, and a little nudge from Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell saw Class P leaders Johan and Etienne Besaidnout move smartly out the way. Next up for Gibson and Campbell, as well as the RFS Toyota Hilux of Christian de Ploy and Henk Janssen van Vuren, were Atang Makgegene and Victor Nsheke.
Overtaking in the dust is often risky business, but Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford were on a charge through the field.
When the Castrol Toyota Hilux of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton fell by the wayside, Hannes Grobler and Jean Moore took over the lead, followed by Donaldson Nissan Navara teammates Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans. Vos and Pitchford recovered superbly to take third place ahead of Hein Lateghan and Chris Birkin in their Castrol Toyota and the RFS Toyota of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst.
There were valuable points for privateers Kobus van Tonde and Rian Guapa in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, the father and son pair of Hicho and Jaap de Bruin in the Micron Excel Toyota Hilux, and a steady run from Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
Cliff and Louis Weichelt scored their third Class D victory on the trot, with Heini Stumpfer and Hendrik van der Linde the only other finishers in the Micron XL Toyota Hilux.
Class E saw Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus score a maiden national win in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, with teammates Dion Venter and Ian Palmer finishing second to hold on to the championship lead. Reigning champions Yanni Visser and York Leroux fought hard for third place, and circuit star Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie scored their first points in the Ferodo Nissan Hardbody.
For the ever-smiling and popular Hannes Grobler, in his last season as a Nissan driver, it was a sweet victory.
It was 3 in a row for Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, with the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4 pair having plenty of time in hand over Herman and Wichard Silvalt in the Silvalt Racing Zarko. It was their best performance so far, with the Palabora pair leading home the steady Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat. Fourth were local crew Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell, with veterans Nardis Alberts and Jeff Minute fifth in their Rapsa Bat.
SA champions Cully and Quinton Sulwald picked up valuable points in 6th place, as did Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Bat, who overcame a litany of problems to finish 7th.
The Class B honours went to champions Johan and Etienne Besaidnout, who increased their lead in the championship. The again impressive Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were second in the KAC Bat, and after battling overheating problems in the Swartring heat, KZN crew Don Thompson and Don Blakey finished third.
A steady drive from Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar in the Orange Tree bat saw them close the gap on early season championship leaders Bez and Dion Besadenhout, with a lot of friendly rivalry developing between the two Cape Town crews. For the Makanete brothers, the learning curve continued, with perseverance becoming a watchword for them.
It was 3 out of 3 for Hutchison and Bergman, and a tight hold on the Special Vehicle Championship lead.
For nearly 30 years, the ABSA Off-Road Championship has paid an annual visit to Botswana for the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, which is unique in that it's the only marathon event on the calendar. The race is also hugely popular with the locals and is the biggest sporting event of the year in Botswana. The Century Racing bat of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith led the way the field, with Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst and Hannes Grobler and John Moore at the front of the production car brigade. Matthews and Smith were early casualties, and the early pace setters in the special vehicle category were Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman. Former winners Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau and Herman and Wichald Zulwald.
Also in the picture were reigning champions Collie and Quinton Solvalt and the Tyrak Jimco of Nahim Mosaji and Mohammed Molson.
On the production car front, there was drama with Hein Lateghan and Chris Birkin into an early lead in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. They were being chased by Duncan Voss and Rolf Pitchford, who started 28th on the road, and Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia in the Mountain Dew Porter. Next up, on a wetter than expected desert race, were Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the Century Racing CR2, and Nick and Ryan Harper going well in the Atlas Copco bat. Also in a charge were Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton, who lost 40 minutes stuck in a mud hole, while the Donaldson Nissans of Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans and Hannes Grobler and John Moore hit the same rock, and Grobler, a hero in Botswana, was forced to retire.
When the Lateghan Birkin Toyota retired, an unbelievable drive had taken championship leaders Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford into the lead. The Donaldson Nissan Navara crew were ahead of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in a much modified RFS Toyota Hilux, and young Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren, who were having a great drive in the second RFS Toyota Hilux.
The impressive Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton had worked their way into fourth, with the race extracting a high rate of attrition. The Atlas Copco Toyota was also slightly modified. Tollefsons and Evans were still running after bastardizing the Grobler car, and the former cricket pro Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald were also soldiering along in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
In Class D, championship leaders Cliff and Louis Weichelt failed to make it to the start, and the high rate of attrition was wreaking havoc. A string of Class E cars led by Pikkie Labaskachny and Rikus Erasmus sailed past Thomas Rundle and Stavros Giannakis, who were well and truly bogged down in the turbo diesel Ford Ranger TDCI. The Fenter Palmer Toyota, Class D leaders Van Breda and de Toy, reigning Class E champions Visser and Leroux, and Heini Strumpfer with Hendrik van der Linde and the Micron Toyota all moved ahead of the stricken Ford.
At the overnight halt, Voss and Pitchford led by 33 minutes after an incredible day.
It was much closer in the special vehicle category, where Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman had been in the lead for most of the day in the Motorrad Riva 1 4x4. Finding the right track through the bushes and thorn trees severely taxed the skills of co-drivers, with cars taking an absolute hammering.
The first four cars were separated by just over 2 minutes, with Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia the surprise package in the Mountain Dew Porter. They were narrowly ahead of Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, who were sponsored by Total Botswana, and former winners Collie and Quinton Solwald, who were having their best outing of the season in the Solwald Racing bat. Nick and Ryan Harper were being hampered by a clutch problem in the Atlas Copco bat, while Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were having another steady day in the Regent Racing bat.
There was also a high rate of attrition in Class B, where David and Gary White came up with their best performance of the season, while Ernest Corbett and Warwick Goosen provided a huge crowd at a river crossing with a little entertainment. Bez and Dion Besaidnout were among the Class B retirements, with Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar leading the field in the Orange Tree bat. Behind them, Class B championship leaders Johan and Etienne Besaidnout were also heading for retirement.
At the overnight halt, a tense situation with 2 minutes between the first 4 cars.
Another tough day lay in wait for the overnight survivors, with Ivar Tollefsen in a military mood and Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford in total control of the race, with the Donaldson-Nissen pair enjoying an overnight lead of 33 minutes. It didn't take long for Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton to take the Castor Toyota Hilux into second place, with Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren holding on to a superb third for their best ever finish in the RFS Toyota. The Tollefsen and Evans Nissen was to be hauled in by both Gary Bertelt and Dani Stassen in the Atlas Copco Toyota, and Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, who were fifth despite a day one coming together with a tree. Hichu and Jaap de Bruin in Micron Excel Toyota just failed to catch the Tollefsen Evans Nissen, while a brave effort from Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald saw them see out the distance in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
Johan and Van der Horn were the only Class D finishers in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser, and it's amazing what people will do to appear on television.
A great result took Class E winners Pakila Beskachny and Rikus Erasmus into 6th overall, with the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota pair leading home champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford duly put the finishing touches to a commanding performance. It was a third win in 4 starts for the Donaldson-Nissen crew and cemented their hold on the production car championship.
The Toyota Desert Race never fails to produce late drama and again didn't disappoint. The total porter pair of Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau made it 2 in a row when a puncture 150 k's into the loop scuppered championship leaders Evan Hutchison and Jim Bergman. The solid Nick and Ryan Harper took third in the Atlas Copco bat, with valuable points for Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in 4th place in the Regent Racing bat. Local hero Atang Makaghenene and Phil Archinal held on for 5th place. There were some big names among the retirements, and Naim Musaji and Mohammed Molson maintained their 100% finish record for the 09 season.
Brothers David and Gary White rekindled their title hopes with a commanding win in Class B in the Ruhr Combat, and Derek du Toit and Ian Pienaar took a maiden Class B victory in the Orange Tree bat.
Back-to-back Botswana wins for Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau also reignited their championship hopes.
Calculating journey. Proceed upstream for 1 kilometer. Turn left at Tin Can. Caution, grizzly bear. Exit ahead. You have arrived at your destination.
Nature relies on instinct. For everyone else, there's Garmin.
What is the color of football? What burns at the heart of competition? What hides behind your opponent's eyes? What illuminates those in the splendor of victory? These are the colors of Italian football. The Serie A continues. World football lives. Only on SuperSport. Brought to you by Peroni Nastro Azzurro.
It's time.
Oh, what an introduction!
Look, every goal.
And scoring a fabulous goal!
Look, every shot!
Lightning!
Live with the African stars.
Look, the greatness.
Live the league. The world's greatest league on the world's biggest sports channel. World football lives on Supersport. Proudly brought to you by Samsung Mobile and Vodacom.
During the ABSA season, it was confirmed that multiple South African champion Hannes Grobler and Nissen would part company after 33 years. It was the end of an era, with the ebullient and universally popular Grobler optimistic about the future and looking forward to new opportunities.
Yeah, it's probably end of an era, you know, coming for 33 years with one manufacturer is a long time, you know, and I've put everything behind it, you know, so yeah.
After a glittering career that brought him South African rally and off-road titles, Hannes was hard pushed to come up with one single career highlight.
You know, there's a lot of highlights, you know, to just take one or two out, it's not going to do justice. But yeah, I think one of my highlights is probably when I won the double champion, you know, the off-road championship and the rally championship in 1986, where I got my Springbok colours, your national colours. That was one of my highlights, and then doing the Dakar on a truck was an unbelievable experience, you know.
The Sun City 400 heralded the start of the second half of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, with the Pilanesberg race always being one of the toughest on the calendar. It is also one of the best organised, and 2 years in a row has been voted Event of the Year. The race started promisingly for Toyota, with factory pair Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton winning the Friday prologue to determine start positions.
It started to go pear-shaped for Castrol Toyota when Taylor and Houghton were early casualties, and new leaders Higo and Jaap de Bruin soon followed them into retirement in the Micron XL Hilux. There was a confident start from Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schultheimer in the turbo diesel factory Ford Ranger TDCi, and on the special vehicle front, desert race winners Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were quick out the blocks. Production car championship leaders Foss and Pitchford were on another rescue mission after a poor prologue and were carving their way through the field. Grobler and Moore were to run into problems in a second Donaldson-Nissan Navara, and that ended their hopes of bouncing back after failing to finish the Toyota 1000 desert race.
There were solid starts from George and Sharon Barkhuizen in the AIM Toyota Hilux and Gary Berthold, who had Andre Vermeulen back with him in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. The RFS Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst was restored to health and looks after the Botswana outing, but was destined to crash out of the race.
After a disappointing season, Collier and Quinton Sulwalt were desperate for a good result and made a promising start in the Sulwalt Racing Bat. The Tollefson Evans Nissan was also to be plagued by problems and was under pressure from Nick and Ryan Harper and the Atlas Copco Bat. Behind them, an interesting duel was unfolding between Kobus van Tonda and Rian Guapa in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, and Thomas Rundle and Stavros Giannakis in the second turbo Ford Ranger TDCi. Rundle and Giannakis also needed a good result, while a pair of locals were on hand to take in Nahim Mosaji and Mohamed Molson's overtake on Hendrik Kraai and Tito Vogt.
The impressive Duncan Voss and Rolf Pitchford again demonstrated their ability to recover from awkward situations and tightened an already firm grip on the production car championship. Toyota pride was salvaged by a hard-earned second place for Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen in the Atlas Copco Hilux, and Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schultheimer secured a first podium finish for the turbo diesel Ford Ranger TDCi. Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald scored their best result of the season so far, and Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vuren followed up third on the desert race with a solid fifth. George and Sharon Barkhuizen also came up with their best result of the year, and there were hard-earned top 10 finishes for Hannes Grobler and Joan Moore, and the Unifreight Ford Ranger of Kobus van Tonda and Rian Guelpa.
River crossings were popular with spectators, and there was a popular result too when after 4 non-finishes in a row, Kutsiela Beskachny and Johan Gerber won Class D in the Raceonics Nissan Hardbody. Heini Strumpfer and Hendrik van der Linde were to join Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger as non-finishers, and second for Devold van Breda and Johan de Tooy in the Northam Toyota Hilux D4D improved their championship hopes.
The Class E battle produced a maiden win for track stars Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie in their Verrode Nissan Hardbody, with Alo de Bruin and Rian Grelen coming up with their best results to date. Third took Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus into the championship lead, with Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux hot on their heels in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
It was a good day for the Atlas Copco team, but it was again Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford who got to spray the champagne at the line.
In a reversal of the Toyota 1000 Desert Race result, the special vehicle win went to Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman ahead of Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau. This time around, it was the total team who lost out via a puncture. Kali and Quinton Sewald took their first podium of the season, and Nick and Ryan Harper were fourth after nearly dropping in for tea with some surprised spectators.
The win virtually wrapped up the title for Hutchison and Bergman, but the Harpers and Naheem Musaji and Mohammed Moulton preserved 100% finish records. There were also solid performances from Herman Sewald and Son Vichard and KZN crew Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell, who were making one of their sporadic appearances in the ABSA Championship.
Despite a persistent misfire, the futuristic Century Racing CR2 in the hands of Ernest Corbett and son-in-law Ian Warwick, Goosen, took Class P honours ahead of the Kraai-Voogd combination. The Besadenhout brothers were non-finishers, and David and Gary White moved up the championship ladder with third in the Ruhr Combat, with Don Thompson and Helma van Gisseling fourth.
The Cape crew of Derek de Toy and Ian Pienaar made it 2 wins in a row in Class B in the Orange Tree Bat. They saw off a determined challenge from Simon Beckett and Steve Harris in the Century Racing Bat.
Brothers Keith and Andrew Makanete were in their first season of National Championship off-road racing, and another solid performance in the Zarco saw them safely into third place and moved them up the championship table. Behind the Makanetes, the Northwest team of Johan de Klerk and Louis Pretorius also showed plenty of perseverance to finish fourth in another Zarco.
For the Motorrad team of Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman, it was 4 wins in 5 starts, with the championship almost in the bag.
The Carnival City Entertainment Centre on the East Rand played host to round 6 of the ABSA Off-Road Championship and heralded a return to action for off-road legend Alfie Cox, who was to shake down a Glenhall-built Nissan Navara to tackle the 2010 Dakar Rally.
An outstanding display in the Friday prologue saw Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar first on the road in the Century Racing CR1. The Century Racing pair were closely followed by Nick and Ryan Harper, as well as Gerard du Plessis and Fadi Seegers, who were having their first national outing in more than 2 years in a rather aging Jimco. Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were also going well in the Big Total Porter.
Carnival City-based events had not been kind to Nissan over the years, but Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were again running at the front of the production car field. The Donaldson Nissan crew were being chased by Naeem Musaji and Mohammed Moulton with the tyre rack Jimco under huge pressure from Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. Taylor and Houghton were headed for retirement, and Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen took over the production car lead. The Atlas Copco car was followed by an out-of-sorts Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman, with a puncture also dropping Foss Pitchford down the order.
It had been an unhappy season for Thomas Rundle and Stavros Giannakis, and matters didn't improve when they managed to roll the turbo diesel Ford Ranger TDCi.
History was in the making in the production car category, with Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen becoming the first privateers to win an event in the SP class era. Ford Racing Ranger pair Neil Woolridge and Kenny Shortheimer picked up their second podium finish in a row, and Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald were on the podium for the first time in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans led the Donaldson Nissan Brigade ahead of Louis Weichelt and Maret Besadenhout and Foss Pitchford, who were down to 6th place.
There was another Class D win for former Blue Bull scrum half Gutsia Labuskaghni and Johan Gerber, with second putting Dewald van Breda and Johan de Toy into the championship lead.
Down in Class E, a first win of the year took Yanni Visser and Joks Leroux to the top of the championship, with the RFS Toyota Hilux coming in ahead of the 4x4 Mega World Toyota of Dion Venter and Ian Palmer. Third in Class E, behind Venter and Palmer, went to Louw de Bruin and Rian Grelen in the Rurcon Ford, with fourth going to Bapi Rubeluza and Kulile Bakaliza in the Factory Ford Ranger.
Victory for Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen snapped a string of 5 Nissan Navara wins and gave Toyota their first win of the season.
There were raised eyebrows in the special vehicle camp when Gerard du Plessis and Ferdi Segers romped home in the Jimco. They were chased all the way by Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, with Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman happy to finish third and make sure of the championship. Another solid performance saw Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson into fourth in the Regent Racing Bat.
Whitehouse and Carlson were ahead of the consistent Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat, with Naheem Mosaji and Mohammed Molson maintaining their 100% finish record for 09. There was also a good showing from Kali Solvalt, and Bula Buertas and Johan Pretorius picked up their best result of the season as well.
A win for David and Gary White took them to the top of Class P championships at the expense of the Besadenhout brothers, who failed to finish. Don Thompson and Helma van Gesseling were a strong second in Azarko, with Archie Rutherford and Craig Doubtfire on the podium in the Regent Racing Jimco. Fourth were veterans Richard Chilling and Chris Davies in the AceCo.
Class B saw Derek de Toye and Ian Pinar pick up their third win in a row ahead of Keith and Andrew Macanete and Johan de Klerk and Louis Pretorius, who were temporarily beached in the Zarko.
Fourth were Simon Beckett and Steve Harris.
Gerard du Plessis and Ferdi Segers and Shamir Variawa with Siegfried Rousseau arrived at the finish together, with 18 seconds the final difference between first and second.
I saw legends being made.
I saw our nation's true colors.
A moment in history.
One day he can tell his grandchildren.
We were there.
I was there.
We were there.
I was there.
I was there. We were there.
Make sure you can say, I was there. Book your seat in history. Visit FIFA.com/2010.
In a series that will define a season lie the moments that will define the series.
We've got every moment covered.
Take a piece of that.
The Proteas against England. The first test, 16 to 20 December. What a summer. On your World of Champions. Proudly delivered to you by RAM. Hand-to-hand couriers.
There's only one team that pushes the limits, sets the pace, and leads the way, keeping you in the winning seat with all the breakaway news, the hottest training tips, the latest equipment, and the most comprehensive highlights of professional cycling from around the world. Join Team Super Cycling every Tuesday night with a repeat on Wednesday, live and exclusive to Supersport, brought to you by MedScheme.
So we will get that schedule revised and sent right out to you, sir.
Sounds good. Listen, I should be back in the office on Tuesday. I'd like to see an updated P&L.
Very good, sir. We're all over it. Not a problem. Take care.
That was close. Yeah, it was close.
I can still hear you. I think we're good. Yeah, that should do it. I think we're good.
Proud sponsor of the Nedbank Golf Challenge.
With the motorsport division to be outsourced from next year, the 2009 ABSA Championship was also the end of an era at Toyota Motorsport. For nearly 20 years, Toyota Motorsport has operated under the guidance of William Haddad, also known to all and sundry as Whammy. The quietly spoken Haddad is a man of few words, but has steered Toyota to an impressive list of circuit racing, rally and off-road successes. Haddad also oversaw the project in 2007 that saw a South African-built Toyota S2000 rally car, later to be internationally homologated by the FIA, almost pull off a sensational win at the Rally of Great Britain.
For nearly 30 years, Toyota has been a staunch supporter of off-road racing in South Africa, and at that time, Toyota crews have gathered a host of national championship accolades in a wide variety of machinery. Never one to seek the limelight, Whammy has worked quietly behind the scenes, but under his guidance, Toyota has won 13 SA Rally Manufacturers Championships since 1991 and 3 off-road championship titles too.
The final event of the season provided Haddad with a perfect send-off. On the RFS Michalis 400, Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton took the overall and SP class wins in the Castrol Toyota Hilux. Toyotas also won classes D and E, took the Manufacturers Award and clinched the South African Manufacturers Championship. Take a bow, Whammy Haddad.
The historic Mpumalanga town of Lydenburg is home to the Toyota Dealer 400, the penultimate round of the ABSA series. The traditional town centre start always draws a huge crowd, and there were high hopes in the Toyota camp of winning their own event. These hopes took an early knock though when prologue winners Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton picked up an early puncture in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, and newly crowned SA champs Foss and Pitchford took over the lead in the Donaldson Nissan Navara.
The Taylor-Houghton Toyota was pushing hard to make up time, but there were early indications of a tremendous race starting to unfold. Taylor and Houghton were being chased by Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, who in turn were being chased by Hugo and Jaap de Bruyn in the Mickelin XL Toyota Hilux. Behind them, there was a terrific fight going on between Highveld 400 winners Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen and the second Castrol Toyota Hilux of Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin.
South African champions Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman were running at the front of the special vehicle category in the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4. Second on the road among the specials were veterans Nardus Alberts and Jeff Minott in the Rapsa Bat. They were closely followed by Alfie Cox and Jürgen Schroeder in the Laser Nissan Navara and the RFS Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, who were back in action after missing the Highveld 400. Closing in on the Toyota were Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the factory turbo diesel Ford Ranger TDCi, with Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore in hot pursuit in their Nissan Navara.
The Toyota Dealer 400 again provided for a route with tight sections, which were interspersed with fast roads where vehicles could stretch their legs. Christian de Ploy and Henk Janssen van Vieren were pushing hard in the RFS Toyota. When behind them, Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were under attack from Class P leaders David and Gary White and Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco cars.
A terrific battle developed at the front of the field where Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford were being chased down by Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton. It was a battle that was to end when a second puncture put paid to Taylor and Houghton and, of course, Castrol Toyota victory hopes.
The second Castrol Toyota of Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin was to inherit second place, and Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans also got past Taylor and Houghton while they were sorting out their puncture woes. Tollefson Evans were holding off Grobler more, with Woolridge and Scholthammer ahead of Alfie Cox and Jürgen Schroeder in the final shakedown of the Nissan Navara, headed for the Dakar Rally.
For champions Foss and Pitchford, it was their 5th victory of the season, and one that got the Donaldson Nissan team back to winning ways. In what turned out to be a memorable race, the production cars produced some stirring battles throughout the field. In the tightest SP class finish on record, there were only 6 minutes between the first 8 arrivals at the line.
There was also plenty of action in Class D, with a muddy section of the route posing a few problems for crews and providing spectator entertainment.
It was finally Debot van Breda and Johan de Tooy in the Northam Toyota D4D who edged out local crew Johan and Werner Horn and Kutsiala Baskachny and Johan Gerber in the Raconics Nissan Hardbody. A mudhole also created problems for Leroy Polter and Rob Howie, but the Nissan crew dominated Class E ahead of reigning champions Jannie Visser and Yorks Leroux in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
With 5 wins from 7 starts, Duncan Vos and Ralph Pitchford were becoming expert at spraying around the traditional winner's bubbly.
With champions Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman falling by the wayside with a broken suspension, veterans Naudus Alberts and Jeff Minnett found themselves leading the special vehicle category ahead of Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson and Naheem Musaji and new co-driver Feroz Duda. Nick and Ryan Harper and Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar completed the top 5, with Bula Boertes with Johan Pretorius surviving a late encounter with mud to record their best finish of the season in 6th place.
Class B honours went to Don Thompson and Helma van Gesseling ahead of the impressive rookies Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in the KEC Bat. There was a non-finish for David and Gary White, and 3rd place lifted Johan and Etienne Besaidnout back to the top of the championship. 4th went to Archie Rutherford and Craig Doubtfire, with Richard Schilling and Chris Davies rounding out the top 5.
There was a 4th straight Class B win for Derek de Tooy, partnered this time out by Steve Harris in the Orange Tree Bat. Another gutsy display took Keith and Andrew Makanete into 2nd place in the race and in the championship. The top 5 in Class B were rounded out by John Telford and Jaco Swart and Legal Eagle Johan de Klerk with Jaco van Aert in another Zarko.
As the champagne flowed for Naudus Alberts and Jeff Minnett, it was 1 up for the older brigade.
The Tarleton International Raceway Complex on the West Rand played host to the RFS Magalies 400, the final event of the ABSA Off-Road Series, with a couple of championship issues still outstanding. The opportunity for something a little different is too much to resist at Tarleton, and there was time for a little fun on the drag strip before getting down to the serious business of off-road racing. Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman set the fastest prologue time and were looking to end the season in high style and fashion.
The father and son Harper team were locked in a struggle with Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau for runner-up honours in the championship, and that battle promised to provide a cameo performance.
The Rapsa-backed pair of Naudus Alberts and Jeff Minnett were looking for back-to-back wins, and there was some early excitement for Gerard du Plessis and Fabrice Serges in the Jimco. An early spin in the Tarleton infield section brought them into the clutches of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
Out on the route, it was high-speed musical chairs, with the Toyota Hilux entries of Hugo and Jaap de Bruin, Gary Bertolt and Andre Vermeulen, and Hein Lategan and Chris Birkin locked in battle. Also part of the act were the Donaldson Nissans of Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans, and Hannes Schrobler and John Moore. Class P crew Richard Schilling and Chris Davies were being closed down by the RFS Toyota Hilux of Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren. And also back in the action after a long layoff through injury was Chris de Plooy and Henny Testege in another RFS Toyota Hilux entry.
After a season that had promised so much but produced so little by way of results, Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton finally came good to score their first win of the season in the Castrol Toyota. Teammates Hein Lategan and Chris Birkin were pipped at the post by Hannes Schrobler and Johan Moore, with Schrobler writing the final chapter of a 33-year association with Nissan.
There There was also another strong showing from Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans, and a top 5 finish for Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald. For champions Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford, a non-finish was a disappointing end to their season, while Hugo and Jaap de Bruyn and Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schorthammer in the Turbo Diesel Ford Rangers signed off with solid top 10 finishes.
Cliff Weichelt and Johan Smallberger won Class D in the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux, ahead of Coetzee Labuschagne and Johan Gerber, but third place was enough to wrap up the championship for Van Breda and de Tooy in the Northam Toyota Hilux D4D. Down in Class E, there was a nail-biting finish to the championship, with Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus failing to catch Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux by a single point.
Toyota ended on a high note by taking the overall and SP class wins and victories in classes D and E. They also took the Manufacturers Award and wrapped up the South African Manufacturers Championship.
Nissan have officially withdrawn from off-road racing, but the Donaldson Nissan team signed off with a bang, with Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford, Ivan Tollefsen with Quinn Evans, and Grobler with Moore taking the first 3 places in the championship. The team scored 6 wins in 8 races, with 5 of them going to Voss and Pitchford.
Yeah, it's almost surreal. We've really had a good run, no major dramas. Ralph and I have looked after the car, it's been reliable and fast, and we've made the most of it.
Pitchford was second on the 09 Dakar, with the ABSA Championship rounding off a good year.
We had a very good season. It started off well. We won about 5 or 6 of the races this year. Duncan's been driving extremely well. We've had a very good car, well-prepared car. And it's just come together for us. You know, we've done well in the time trials in the beginning of the year. Then we sort of faded a little bit, but we always came back, you know, from the back and managed to win the races. So we've been very lucky this year.
The special vehicle overall and Class A win of the season went to the ever-consistent Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat. They saw off the challenge of Naheem Musaji and Feroz Duda in the Tyrak Jimco, with second, the best result of the season for the Limpopo-based team.
There was also a best result of the year for Bula Boertes and Johan Pretorius in the Boertes Transport entry, with another strong finish from Toyota Dealer 400 winners Nardis Alberts and Jeff Minnett in the Rapsa Bat. Fifth in Class A went to Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, who maintained a 100% finish record in the Regent Racing Bat. Clutch problems finally dropped Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau down to 6th in class in the Total Porter.
There was a maiden national win for Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in Class P, but second place was enough to give Johan and Etienne Besaidnout back-to-back championship titles. Don Thompson and Helmar van Geerslen were third, with Thompson taking second in the Drivers' Championship.
Another Class B win wrapped up a fine season for champions Derek de Tooy and Ian Pienaar, with Johan de Klerk and Louis Pretorius the only other finishers in Azarko.
After a tough season, Nick and Ryan Harper finally got the chance to spray the other with champagne and clinched the runner-up spot in the special vehicle category.
It was a memorable season for Evan Hutchinson, who also won the Class A7 title in the Sasol SA Rally Championship.
You know, we put in a huge amount of effort. We have done so for the last 5 years, and I think that's what's rewarded Motorrad with 5 championships in 5 years. You know, whatever we do with a huge amount of effort. No expense is spared, no effort is spared. You know, we've got the best possible people to do the job. We put the best possible car together, and I think Achim has turned into one of the best navigators out there, and I've managed to be successful with my driving, you know. But it's a combination of everything. You know, it doesn't help to be a fast driver if you don't have the right support behind you, and again, building your own car and getting that to every event and finishing and winning every event is testament to the amount of effort that we do put in, you know.
The final event of the year has seen the off-road community stage for 21 years the Sunfield Homes Charity Day. Sunfield Homes caters for children with Down syndrome, and the kids are treated to a morning of being driven around a test track at Tarleton International Raceway.
The track outing is followed by a scrumptious lunch provided by Kopanong Hotel. magicians, and a puppet show with the kids enjoying every single minute.
Santa Claus's reindeer got in there to hand out presents, with all proceeds generously donated by off-road sponsors and teams going towards building a frail care centre at Sunfield Homes.